The jungle was alive with strange sounds. Faint blue lights glowed in the thick mist, hovering like ghostly fireflies. The air smelled of damp earth and something sweet, like overripe fruit. Commander Daniel Voss moved carefully, his boots sinking into the soft ground. His ship, the Horizon, was miles behind him, hidden beyond the dense alien trees. His mission was simple: explore and report. But something about this world felt wrong. Daniel gripped his rifle, scanning the trees. They were tall and twisted, their dark leaves swaying without wind. His helmet display flickered, struggling to map the terrain. This place messed with his equipment, or maybe something was interfering. He tapped his comm. "Control, do you read me?" "Static." Daniel frowned. He had been on countless planets before, but this one unsettled him. His instincts whispered a warning. He was being watched. A rustling sound. He spun, raising his rifle. Nothing. Just shadows shifting between the trees. Probably an animal, he told himself. But his gut knew better. Then, a whisper. "You shouldn't be here." Daniel's heart pounded. The voice was soft, almost musical, yet filled with urgency. He turned sharply and froze. A woman stood in the shadows, half hidden by the twisted roots of a massive tree. Not human. Xilari. Her tall, slender frame was covered in dark, chitinous armor that gleamed like polished stone. Silver eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, and intricate markings ran across her skin like delicate veins of light. She was beautiful, but dangerous. Daniel tightened his grip on his rifle. "Who are you?" The alien woman stepped closer, moving like a shadow. "Leave. Now." Daniel's mind raced. The Xilari were not friendly to humans. They never had been. His people had learned little about them, only that they avoided human colonies and protected their own worlds fiercely. This planet wasn't even supposed to be inhabited. And yet here she was. He didn't lower his rifle. "This is uncharted territory. My mission is to explore." The alien woman's eyes flashed. "Your mission will get you killed." Before Daniel could respond, a deep growl rumbled through the trees. His blood turned cold. It was low, guttural, and close. The Xilari's expression hardened. "Run." A shape lunged from the darkness. Daniel barely had time to react. Something massive crashed through the jungle, knocking trees aside like twigs. It had 6 glowing eyes, thick armored plating, and long, sharp limbs that cut through the air. Daniel fired on instinct. Blue energy bolts hit the creature's hide, but it barely flinched. It reared up, towering over him. Clawed limbs swiped. He dodged, rolling into the mud. The Xilari moved like lightning. She leaped, twin blades extending from her wrists, and slashed across the creature's face. It roared in fury, its 6 eyes flashing red. "Move, human," she shouted. Daniel scrambled to his feet. The creature lunged again, but this time, the Xilari twisted midair, landing gracefully on its back. Her blades pierced its neck, sending out a burst of dark, smoking fluid. The beast shrieked. Then it collapsed. For a moment, everything was still. Daniel's breathing was ragged. He looked at the alien woman, his mind struggling to process what just happened. She wiped her blades on the grass, her silver eyes locking onto his. "You are not safe here," she said, her voice quieter now. "They will come for you." Daniel straightened. "Who?" She hesitated. Then, finally, she spoke. "My people." A chill ran through him. "Why?" he asked. The Xilari stepped closer. Too close. Her presence was overwhelming, powerful, like standing near a wild storm. "Because," she whispered, "this world does not belong to you, and they will kill you before you learn why." Daniel's grip on his rifle tightened. His mission was already spiraling out of control. His ship was far, communications were dead, and now he had a warning from an alien who should not exist on this planet. The jungle around them fell into deep silence. Even the strange glowing insects had vanished. The air was thick with danger. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to run, but something in the Xilari's voice, in her silver eyes, told him there was more to this than just a territorial dispute. "What do you know?" he asked. The Xilari studied him for a long moment. Then, without another word, she turned and disappeared into the darkness. Daniel had a choice. He could turn back, return to his ship, and report this as a failed mission. Or he could follow her and uncover the truth. His decision was made before he even realized it. Gripping his rifle, Daniel stepped into the shadows, after the alien woman who had just saved his life, and possibly changed it forever. Daniel moved swiftly through the dense jungle, following the Xilari woman who had saved his life. The glowing blue mist around them shifted like a living thing, casting eerie shadows on the twisted trees. His boots crunched against damp leaves as he kept his rifle ready, his heart still pounding from the recent fight. The alien woman walked ahead, silent and graceful. Her silver eyes flickered back at him now and then, as if checking to see if he was still following. She didn't trust him. That much was clear. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "Who are you?" She didn't stop. "Karenia." "Karenia," he repeated, testing the name. "You saved my life." "Why?" She hesitated but kept moving. "Because your death would bring more humans here." Daniel frowned. "I don't understand." She turned sharply, her silver eyes glowing in the dark. "You shouldn't be here. Your people should never have come to this planet." Daniel met her gaze. "I wasn't told about any Xilari presence. My mission was to explore and report." Karenia studied him for a moment, then sighed. "Of course. They didn't tell you." A sudden distant howl cut through the jungle. It was not the same creature from before. This was different, higher, sharper, and there were many. Karenia's expression darkened. "They're coming." Daniel's grip tightened on his rifle. "Who?" She grabbed his arm, pulling him forward. "Run." They sprinted through the trees. The jungle blurred past as Daniel dodged low branches and twisted roots. Behind them, the howls grew louder. He could hear the sound of something fast. Many somethings, moving through the undergrowth. Karenia led him to a hidden cave entrance, barely visible behind thick vines. She pushed him inside. "Stay quiet." Daniel caught his breath as she sealed the entrance behind them, pressing her palm against a strange bioluminescent panel on the cave wall. A faint glow rippled across the rock, and the entrance sealed itself, blending into the surroundings. Darkness. Then, soft blue lights flickered to life, revealing the cavern's interior. The walls pulsed with a faint organic glow, and ancient symbols covered the stone. Daniel stared. "What is this place?" Karenia turned to him, her expression unreadable. "A forgotten sanctuary." He studied the markings on the walls. Some looked ancient, others more recent, scratched into the stone with urgency. "You live here?" She shook her head. "No, I am only a guardian." Daniel exhaled, still processing everything. What were those creatures outside? Karenia's gaze darkened. Hunters. Daniel didn't like the sound of that. Xilari hunters. She hesitated. Then, finally, she nodded. "Yes." Daniel clenched his jaw. "So your people really are trying to kill me?" Karenia didn't deny it. "They will not stop." Daniel ran a hand through his short, sweat-dampened hair. "Why?" "Just because I stepped on this planet." Karenia walked past him, running her fingers over the glowing symbols on the wall. "This world was once a stronghold of my people. Sacred. But long ago, it was lost." Daniel frowned. "Lost? How?" Karenia's hands clenched. "Because of humans." His chest tightened. "I don't understand. My people only recently started exploring beyond our borders. If we took something, I don't know about it." Karenia turned to face him. "And yet my people remember. They believe humans stole something precious from us, something that should never have left this world." Daniel processed her words carefully. A stolen artifact. A betrayal. None of this made sense. Then why save me? He asked. Karenia sighed. Because I do not believe in blind revenge. Daniel studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. He saw only exhaustion and something else. Doubt. Before he could respond, a faint humming sound filled the air. Not from outside. From within the cave. Karenia stiffened. They found us. Daniel gripped his rifle. Your people. She shook her head. Worse. The walls shimmered as small metallic shapes crawled out of hidden cracks, insect-like machines, their eyes glowing red. Daniel cursed under his breath. What the hell are those? Karenia pulled out a slender, curved dagger. Watchers. The Watchers moved fast. Too fast. Daniel opened fire, blue energy bolts slicing through the dark. The first few Watchers exploded into sparks, but more came. Karenia moved like a shadow, slashing through the swarm with precise, fluid strikes. Daniel dodged as one of the machines lunged at him, its tiny claws razor-sharp. He smashed it with the butt of his rifle, then shot another out of the air. We need to go, Karenia shouted. Daniel nodded. Where? She stabbed her dagger into the wall, triggering a hidden doorway. A passage opened beneath them, a tunnel leading deeper underground. Daniel didn't hesitate. He jumped in. Karenia followed, sealing the entrance behind them, just as the Watchers swarmed the spot where they had stood. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Karenia spoke. We are not alone on this planet, and if you want to live, you must learn the truth. Daniel exhaled. His mission was no longer about exploration. It was about survival. And something told him this was just the beginning. The tunnel was cold and damp, the walls pulsing with a faint blue glow. Daniel followed Karenia through the narrow passage, his boots crunching against the uneven stone. His heart was still racing from the fight with the Watchers, those strange, insect-like machines that had attacked them. What were those things? He asked, gripping his rifle tightly. Karenia didn't stop walking. Watchers, machines left behind long ago. They hunt anything that does not belong. Daniel frowned. And I don't belong. Karenia glanced at him, her silver eyes unreadable. No, you do not. He sighed. Figures. The tunnel twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the planet's surface. The air grew warmer, and a strange hum vibrated through the walls. Daniel had been on many planets before, but this place felt alive, as if the world itself was watching them. Finally, the tunnel opened into a massive underground chamber. Daniel's breath caught. The walls stretched high, covered in glowing symbols and strange carvings. Massive pillars rose from the ground, reaching toward a ceiling covered in shimmering blue light. In the center of the chamber stood a floating crystal structure, spinning slowly, humming with energy. What is this place? He whispered. Karenia stepped forward, running her fingers along one of the glowing symbols. This was once a Xelari sanctuary, a place of knowledge. She turned to him. Before your people came. Daniel stiffened. You keep saying that, but I don't know anything about humans coming here before. Karenia's gaze hardened. Your leaders know. Daniel wanted to argue, but deep down, he felt an uneasy truth settling in his gut. What if she was right? What if his mission had been based on a lie? Karenia touched the floating crystal, and suddenly, the chamber came to life. The walls glowed brighter, and holographic images flickered in the air, scenes from the past. Daniel saw visions of the Xelari, their cities thriving, their people at peace. Then, chaos, explosions, ships descending from the sky. Daniel's blood ran cold. Human ships. The images changed. A group of humans in advanced suits entered a sacred hall, taking something from the Xelari, a large, glowing artifact. As soon as they removed it, the entire city collapsed. Daniel stared in shock. That can't be real. Karenia turned to him. It is. He shook his head. But we don't do this. Humanity explores, yes, but we don't steal from alien civilizations. If we did, I would know. Karenya's expression didn't change. Perhaps you would. Perhaps you would not. Daniel clenched his jaw. If what she was saying was true, his mission was never about exploration. It was about covering up the past. Before he could say anything, the chamber shook violently. A deep rumbling sound filled the air. Karenya's eyes widened. They found us. Daniel raised his rifle. The Watchers. Karenya shook her head. Worse. Suddenly, a massive explosion blew open the far side of the chamber. Rocks and debris scattered as a group of armored Silari warriors stepped through the smoke, weapons drawn. Karenya grabbed Daniel's arm and pulled him behind a pillar. The lead warrior, taller and bulkier than the others, stepped forward. His armor was darker, more ornate. His voice echoed through the chamber. Karenya, he said, his tone sharp. You are harboring a human. Karenya stood her ground. He does not know the truth. The warrior's gaze landed on Daniel, his silver eyes cold. Then he will die ignorant. Daniel tightened his grip on his rifle. He had faced enemy soldiers before, but this felt different. These were not just soldiers. They were executioners. Karenya stepped forward. Keeler, listen to me. We have been told lies. The Watchers attacked us. They do not serve the Silari. They serve something else. The warrior, Keeler, frowned. That does not change what this human is. He is a trespasser, and our law demands his death. Daniel muttered, Great law. Karenya's fists clenched. Keeler, we were both told the same history. What if it is wrong? Keeler took a step closer. You would betray your own kind for this. Karenya didn't answer. Keeler raised his weapon. Then you leave me no choice. Before Daniel could react, Karenya moved. She was fast, faster than he had ever seen anyone move. In a single motion, she leaped into the air, flipping over Keeler, and struck him across the back with her blade. Keeler stumbled forward, growling in pain. Daniel didn't waste time. He fired his rifle, blasting one of the other warriors. The chamber erupted into chaos. Karenya fought with deadly precision, moving like a shadow. Daniel took cover, firing controlled bursts, forcing the Silari warriors to take cover. But they were outnumbered. Keeler roared, swinging his weapon at Karenya. She barely dodged, but the force of the strike sent her crashing against a pillar. Daniel gritted his teeth. They wouldn't survive this. Unless... His eyes darted toward the floating crystal in the center of the room. The artifact. If it was really the key to the truth, then maybe. He had no choice. Daniel ran toward it. Karenya's eyes widened. Daniel, wait. Too late. Daniel grabbed the crystal. A blinding light filled the chamber. The last thing he heard was Keeler shouting before everything went white. A blinding light filled the chamber as Daniel's hand touched the floating crystal. His body felt weightless, like he was falling through an endless void. His vision blurred, and suddenly he was somewhere else. The underground chamber, the Silari warriors, Karenya. It all vanished. He stood in the middle of a grand Silari city, unlike anything he had ever seen. The buildings were tall and elegant, their surfaces glowing with flowing blue energy. The streets were alive with Silari citizens, their silver eyes filled with peace and wisdom. Daniel turned in awe. Was this real? Or just a vision? Then, the sky darkened. A massive human warship appeared above the city, its engines roaring like a storm. Smaller ships descended rapidly, and within moments, explosions tore through the streets. Screams filled the air as Silari civilians ran for their lives. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. This was an invasion. Human soldiers in heavy armor marched through the city, weapons raised. The Silari warriors fought back fiercely, but they were outmatched. The human forces were stronger, better equipped, and they had one goal: to take something. Daniel turned his gaze toward the heart of the city. A group of human officers stood before a massive structure, its walls covered in glowing symbols. In the center, on a pedestal of silver stone, lay the same floating crystal he had just touched. One of the human officers, a tall man with a scar across his face, stepped forward. His voice echoed in Daniel's ears. "This is it. Secure the artifact." The soldiers moved quickly, placing strange devices around the crystal. As soon as they activated them, the city shuddered. The HFY warriors watching from a distance screamed in horror. Daniel saw Karenia, or at least someone who looked like her. Her ancestor. She stood among the group of HFY, watching helplessly as the crystal was taken. And then everything collapsed. Buildings shattered into dust. The once thriving city crumbled, swallowed by the ground as the sky burned with fire. The human ships fled, carrying the crystal away, while the HFY civilization was wiped out in an instant. Daniel's heart pounded. Had his people really done this? Before he could process it, the vision shattered. Back in reality, Daniel gasped, his body slamming back into the present. His head spun, his breath ragged. The chamber was still there, but everything was different. The HFY warriors had fallen back, their weapons lowered. Karenia was staring at him, wide-eyed. Keeler, the HFY commander, stepped forward. His voice was rough. "You saw it, didn't you?" Daniel swallowed hard. His mind raced with the memories. The truth. His people had destroyed this world. He met Karenia's gaze. "You were right." A heavy silence filled the room. Karenia's fists clenched. "And now you understand why my people want revenge." Daniel exhaled. "I do." He turned to Keeler. "But killing me won't fix the past." Keeler's expression remained cold. "No, but it would be justice." Daniel didn't flinch. Justice isn't killing one man for something he didn't do. It's finding out why it happened, who ordered it, and stopping it from happening again. Karenia hesitated. She looked at Keeler, then back at Daniel. "He speaks the truth," she said softly. Keeler's eyes burned with anger. "You would trust a human." Karenia's voice was firm. "I trust what I saw." The tension in the room was thick. Daniel knew Keeler wanted him dead, and maybe he deserved it. But he wasn't going to give up. "We can find the artifact," Daniel said suddenly. "The one that was stolen. If we get it back, maybe we can fix what was lost." Karenia's eyes widened. "You would do that?" Daniel nodded. "I have to." Keeler's jaw tightened. "And why should we believe you?" Daniel took a slow breath. "Because now, I need answers too." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, finally, Karenia turned to Keeler. "We let him live," she said. "For now." Keeler's expression darkened, but after a tense pause, he nodded. "Very well. But if he betrays us," he looked directly at Daniel. "I will kill you myself." Daniel didn't doubt it. Karenia turned to Daniel. "We must leave. If the Watchers know we're here, others will come." Daniel adjusted his rifle. "Where do we go?" Karenia's eyes flickered toward the crystal, to the surface, and then to the stars. Daniel took a deep breath. He had come here as an explorer, but now he was part of something much bigger. And for the first time, he wasn't sure if humanity was the hero of this story. Daniel adjusted the straps of his gear as he followed Karenia through the dimly lit tunnels of the ancient ruins. The air was cold, carrying the scent of damp stone, and something else, something old. The glowing symbols on the walls pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat, guiding them deeper. His mind was still racing from what he had seen. The vision of the past. The destruction of the HFY civilization. Had humanity really done that? Karenia walked ahead, silent and focused. Daniel could tell she was still wary of him, and he didn't blame her. If their roles were reversed, he wouldn't trust himself either. Breaking the silence, he asked, "Where are we going?" Karenia didn't stop walking. "To the surface, We need to leave this place before the Watchers decide to hunt again. Daniel glanced behind them. He could still hear the faint mechanical clicking echoing from the distant chambers. The Watchers were not following, but he could feel their presence, waiting. "How do you know so much about them?" he asked. Karenia hesitated before answering. "Because they were created to guard what was stolen." Daniel frowned. "The artifact." She nodded. "After your people took it, my ancestors knew they couldn't let anyone else reach the truth. So they created the Watchers, machines without mercy. But in the end, even they couldn't stop what was coming." Daniel's stomach twisted. And what was coming? Karenia stopped walking. She turned to face him, her silver eyes meeting his. "The end of my people." A heavy silence filled the tunnel. Daniel clenched his fists. He had spent his whole life believing humans were the pioneers of the stars, bringing knowledge and progress wherever they went. But now, it seemed like history had been rewritten, and he was determined to learn the truth. "We'll find the artifact," he said firmly. "We'll set things right." Karenia studied him for a long moment. Then, to his surprise, she gave a small nod. "We'll see." The surface. After what felt like hours, they reached a massive metal door, the exit. Karenia placed her hand on a glowing panel, and with a deep rumble, the door slid open. A harsh wind blew into the tunnel, carrying the scent of ash and iron. Daniel stepped out, and his breath caught in his throat. The world outside was a graveyard. The sky was dark and stormy, with flashes of violet lightning illuminating the horizon. Jagged mountains stretched in the distance, their peaks covered in ruins of forgotten cities. The ground was cracked and lifeless, littered with the remains of structures that once stood tall. This had once been a thriving world. Now it was nothing but dust and memories. Karenia stood beside him. "This is what your people left behind." Daniel had no words. He had seen many planets in his career, but never one so empty. A sudden roar echoed in the sky. Daniel snapped his head up just in time to see a massive starship descending. His heart pounded. "That's a Terran ship." Karenia's expression darkened. "They found us." The ship was sleek and black, marked with the emblem of the Terran Dominion. Powerful engines roared as it hovered above the ruins. Then, drop pods launched from its hull. Daniel cursed. "They're sending a team." Karenia grabbed his arm. "Then we need to move. Now." The chase. They ran across the rocky terrain as the drop pods crashed into the ground behind them. The doors burst open, and heavily armed Terran soldiers emerged, their visors scanning the area. Daniel knew these men. Black Ops. They weren't here to rescue him. They were here to eliminate witnesses. A voice crackled through the soldiers' radios. "Recover the artifact. Kill the Xilari. And if Carter resists, eliminate him." Daniel's blood ran cold. Karenia grabbed his wrist. "Come on." They sprinted toward the jagged cliffs, trying to put distance between them and the soldiers. Pulse rifles fired, energy bolts striking the ground near their feet. Daniel turned and fired back, forcing the soldiers to take cover. But there were too many of them. Karenia suddenly stopped. "There," she pointed. A small scout ship was hidden in the wreckage of an old Xilari tower. Its hull was battered, but it looked operational. Daniel grinned. "That'll do." They ran toward it as the soldiers closed in. Karenia leaped into the cockpit, her fingers flying over the controls. The ship hummed to life, its engines sparking. Daniel turned and fired a few more shots before jumping in after her. Go, go, go. The ship's engines roared as it lifted off the ground. The soldiers fired at them, but it was too late. The ship shot into the sky, leaving the ruined world behind. As they reached the upper atmosphere, Daniel exhaled. That was too close. Karenia didn't look at him. "They won't stop." Daniel nodded. "I know." His own people had turned against him. And now, the only person he could trust was a woman who had every reason to hate him. Karenia looked at him, her expression unreadable. Are you still sure you want to do this? Daniel met her gaze. If there's a chance to fix the past, then I have to try. Karenia studied him for a moment, then nodded. Then we find the artifact. The ship turned toward the stars, and the real journey began. The scout ship soared through the endless darkness of space, leaving the ruined planet far behind. The controls hummed softly as Karenia steered the ship, her silver-blue fingers moving swiftly over the dashboard. Daniel sat beside her, watching the stars streak past the window. His mind was still racing. His own people, the Terran Dominion, had tried to kill them. They wanted to erase the past, to bury the truth about what had happened to the Accelerary civilization. And now, he and Karenia were alone, heading into the unknown. Daniel exhaled. Where do we even start? Karenia's gaze remained on the controls. The artifact was taken centuries ago. If we want to find it, we need a map. Daniel frowned. Do you know where to get one? She nodded. The Accelerary once had a hidden archive. It holds records of everything, our history, our technology, and the location of the artifact. Daniel leaned forward. Where is this archive? Karenia hesitated before answering. It's on Veshar 3, a dead moon, deep in Dominion territory. Daniel cursed under his breath. Of course, it wouldn't be easy. The risky plan. The Terran Dominion had complete control over Veshar 3. It was once a mining colony, but after the Accelerary War, the Dominion turned it into a restricted zone. If they got caught trying to land there, they wouldn't get a second chance. Daniel sighed. Great, so we're sneaking into one of the most heavily guarded locations in human space. Karenia's lips curled into a faint smirk. You're the one who said we have to try. Daniel shook his head. Yeah. So what's the plan? Karenia tapped a few buttons, pulling up a holographic display. A small station orbited Veshar 3. This is an old Dominion outpost, she explained. If we disable its radar, we can land undetected. Daniel studied the image. And how do we do that? Karenia gave him a sideways glance. We get inside. Daniel let out a low chuckle. Of course, another infiltration mission. Karenia's expression grew serious. If we fail, we die. Daniel adjusted his rifle. Then let's not fail. Infiltrating the outpost. Hours later, their scout ship drifted toward the Dominion outpost. It was a small, circular station, orbiting the moon like a silent sentinel. Karenia activated the ship's stealth field, making them invisible to scanners. Daniel pulled on a helmet and checked his gear. We go in fast, disable the radar, and get out. No unnecessary risks. Karenia nodded. Agreed. They docked the ship at one of the maintenance ports. The hatch hissed open, and Daniel climbed inside the dark station, his rifle ready. The halls were dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of old machinery. Karenia led the way, her movements swift and silent. Daniel checked his scanner. 2 guards up ahead. Karenia pulled out a small energy blade, its edge glowing faintly. We take them quietly. Daniel nodded, stealth over gunfire. Moving quickly, they approached the guards. Karenia struck first, knocking one out with a precise hit. Daniel grabbed the second, choking him out before he could sound the alarm. They dragged the unconscious bodies into a storage room and continued forward, disabling the radar. The control room was just ahead. Karenia hacked the door panel, and it slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, monitors flickered with data, showing radar scans of the entire system. Daniel moved to the terminal. I'll shut it down. Karenia kept watch at the door. Make it quick. Daniel's fingers flew across the controls. He bypassed the security protocols, inputting false signals to make it seem like the radar was still operational. Within seconds, the station's radar went blind. He turned to Karenia. Done. Let's move. Suddenly, an alarm blared. Karenia's eyes narrowed. They know we're here. Daniel swore. So much for stealth. The escape. Footsteps pounded down the hall. The station's soldiers were coming. Daniel fired up his rifle. "I'll hold them off. You get to the ship." Karenia shook her head. "I'm not leaving you behind." Daniel smirked. "Just trust me." She hesitated, then nodded and sprinted toward the docking bay. The first soldier burst into the room. Daniel fired a precise shot, hitting him in the chest. More followed, but Daniel moved quickly, ducking behind cover as lasers flashed past him. He threw a small EMP grenade, shutting down the station's lights. In the darkness, he moved swiftly, taking down 2 more guards before sprinting toward the exit. Karenia had already powered up the ship. The hatch was open, waiting for him. Daniel jumped inside just as more soldiers appeared behind him. "Go, go, go," he shouted. Karenia punched the throttle, and the ship blasted away from the station. The Dominion forces scrambled to react, but it was too late. Their ship was already disappearing into the stars. Veshar 308s. Daniel caught his breath, leaning against the wall of the cockpit. That was close. Karenia nodded. Too close. But they had done it. The station's radar was offline. They could land on Veshar 3 undetected. Daniel looked at the dark moon on the screen. It was waiting for them. Deep beneath its surface lay the Xilari archive, the key to finding the artifact. Karenia glanced at him. "Ready?" Daniel smiled. "Always." As the ship descended, both of them knew the real challenge was just beginning. The scout ship descended through the thick, swirling clouds of Veshar 3. Outside the window, the moon's surface stretched far and wide, a wasteland of dark canyons and towering rock formations. It was a silent grave, hiding secrets long forgotten. Daniel gripped his seat as Karenia skillfully navigated through a storm of electric dust. "You sure the archive is down there?" Karenia nodded, eyes fixed on the controls. It was built deep underground to keep it hidden. If the Dominion never found it, it should still be intact. The ship touched down on a flat plateau, hidden between sharp cliffs. As the engines cooled, silence filled the cockpit. Daniel exhaled. "All right, let's find this place." The descent into darkness. The two of them climbed out, their boots crunching against the rocky ground. The air was thin and cold. Above, lightning flashed in the violet sky. Karenia pulled out a holo device, scanning the terrain. A small blip appeared on the display. "There's a passage nearby." They moved carefully, scanning the ruins around them. Giant stone pillars, half buried in dust, stood as the last remains of an ancient Xilari city. Then they saw it, a massive steel door built into the side of a cliff, the entrance to the archive. Daniel stepped forward and ran his fingers over the metal surface. "How do we open it?" Karenia examined the control panel beside it. It was old, rusted, and covered in strange symbols. "Stand back," she said. She placed her palm on the panel. The symbols glowed faintly, then flickered. A deep rumbling sound filled the air as the massive door began to slide open. Daniel grinned. "Nice trick." Karenia gave a small smile. "It recognizes Xilari DNA." Inside, a long stairway led downward, disappearing into shadows. Daniel flicked on his flashlight. "After you." The archive's heart. They moved carefully through the tunnels. The deeper they went, the colder it became. The walls were lined with strange holographic carvings, glowing softly, stories of the Xilari's past. Finally, they reached the main chamber. It was a vast underground hall filled with floating data crystals. The air pulsed with energy, as if the walls themselves were alive. Daniel stared in awe. "This is incredible." Karenia moved to a central control pedestal. She placed her hand on it, and instantly, a giant holographic star map projected into the air. She scanned through the glowing constellations, the artifact's last recorded location. She tapped one of the points on the map, and the stars shifted. A single red marker blinked over a distant, forgotten system. There. She turned to Daniel. That's where your people took it. Daniel memorized the coordinates. Then that's where we're going. Suddenly, a warning alarm blared. Daniel spun around. What was that? Karenia's face darkened. Someone triggered the Archive's defense system. A low, mechanical hum filled the chamber. From the shadows, tall, metal constructs began to stir. Their glowing red eyes flickered to life. The Guardians, Karenia whispered. They were built to protect this place. Daniel tightened his grip on his rifle. And I'm guessing they don't care that you're auxiliary. Karenia shook her head. No, they only see intruders. The first Guardian stepped forward. It was twice the size of a human, its arms ending in sharp, blade-like appendages. Then, all at once, they attacked. Escape or die. Daniel fired his rifle, hitting the nearest Guardian in the chest. The energy blast barely slowed it down. Karenia dodged as another Guardian swung at her, its blade missing her by inches. She rolled to the side, pulling out a small energy disk and throwing it at the machine. The disk latched onto its body and exploded, sending the Guardian crashing to the ground. Daniel grabbed Karenia's arm. We need to move. Now. They sprinted back toward the stairs as more Guardians emerged from the shadows. The whole Archive was coming alive, closing in around them. One Guardian leaped in front of them, blocking their path. Daniel acted fast. He pulled a shock grenade from his belt and tossed it. The blast of electricity sent the Guardian into a violent spasm, and it collapsed, its circuits fried. They ran up the staircase, dodging blasts from the pursuing machines. As they reached the exit, Karenia slammed her hand on the control panel, and the massive door began to close. The Guardians rushed toward them, but the door sealed shut just in time. A heavy silence followed. Daniel panted. That was too close. Karenia nodded, catching her breath. But we got what we came for. A new destination. Back aboard the scout ship, Daniel entered the coordinates into the navigation system. The destination blinked on the screen. The Kelrith Expanse, an uncharted region of space. Daniel turned to Karenia. That's where the artifact is. She nodded. And if the Dominion finds out? Daniel's jaw tightened. Then we need to get there first. Karenia took her seat at the controls. Then let's not waste time. The ship's engines roared to life, and as it blasted into hyperspace, they knew. The final battle was coming.